Hello, how are you? Well, welcome to third term. Today we're going to be focusing on creative writing. Remember that I introduced you guys to creative writing last term, and this term I want to emphasize more on it. Now, you remember I said that creative writing has to do with bringing into existence imaginative works. And so simply put, we can define creative writing as the process of bringing into existence a literary work which never existed through imaginative thinking and writing. You see it, you draft a picture in your mind of something which has never really existed, and try to say you can paint it on paper to make it look as though it existed. So you give it names, you give the characters names, sometimes even human names, yes, just to make whoever is going to read what you're writing believe that it's a real life story. However, you could also pick real life stories and modify them to suit your taste. Is that okay? Such a case involves using your mind, which has to do with imaginative thinking, and then you put it down on paper just to create aesthetics, which is beauty. Is that okay? So, to do this, you consider which aspect of literary writing you want to focus on. You can go with prose. So creative writing can take any of the following forms. You can take the form of prose, you can take the form of drama, you can take the form of poetry, right? Now, but before you proceed into writing, which is very, 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 very vital, you need to take note of this, that the terms inherent in creative writing are the engine of creative writing. These terms you're going to come across, without them you cannot effectively do creative writing. Is that okay? Remember that your creative writing can take the form of prose or drama or poetry, anyone you want to deal with. Prose, you know, is storytelling, you're going to tell a story, right? Then drama has to do with creating or representing human life as though it actually existed in your writing. Is that okay? Very good. Then poetry has to do with a verse-like composition. In other words, you do it in a rhythmic pattern or in stanzas, or in canto, as the case may be. You choose how you want to proceed with that. Already you're familiar with prose because you read novels, you're familiar with drama pieces because you read plays, you're familiar with poetry because you read poems. Is that okay? So that is basically what we're talking about. But there are certain terms which are inherent in most of these works which we need to consider. The first of them is plot. Plot has to do with the arrangement of the piece, the writing. How do you arrange it? Do you begin the story sequentially from the very beginning, proceed with it to the very end, or you start the story in the middle, go back to the beginning through the use of a certain tool called flashback, and then you conclude it? Or you start the story from the very end itself, go back to the beginning, and take us back to the middle. In the first instance, where you start the story sequentially from the beginning to the very end, we call that a chronological or sequential or linear or organic plot. Any of those names. We call it what? We call it chronological or organic or linear or sequential plot. Sequential plot. Is that okay? Is that okay? That's where you state the story from the very beginning to the end in sequential order. In sequential what? Order. But where you start the story, maybe in the middle, for example, go back to the beginning of how it all started and end it. You are doing what we call episodic. Episodic or inorganic. Episodic or inorganic what? Plot. That is what you do. So this particular one does not have a pattern. You can start at the end of the story, go back to the middle, then go back to the beginning. Now, when you start from the very beginning There are certain tools you could use. You could use something called projection. You push it forward, tell us what happens in the middle. Then you come back to the beginning again through the tool called flashback. Now, listen. What keeps your reader interested in what you're writing is what we call suspense. What do we call it? Suspense. We call it what? Suspense. Now, we said that the tool you use to take your writing forward is called what? Foreshadowing. Or what? Or projection. Foreshadowing or what? Projection. Then when you have gone forward and you want to take us back to the beginning of the story and tell us how it all started, we use the tool called what? Flashback. Is that okay? Very good. Now, if you have understood that so far, that is how plot operates. The arrangement. It's either you arrange it sequentially to the end or you scatter the arrangement. When you arrange it sequentially, we call it what? Chronological plot. When you scatter it, we call it what? Episodic plot. Then we move on to setting, number 2. Setting refers to the environment and the conditions within which the characters in the work move in. For example, you can set your story in a location where the people bear what do you call it? Tribal marks. They have the wear gele, the tie gele, I mean to say. They wear beads, they use calabash, you are trying to create an environment. That environment may suit a particular geographical location, maybe a Yoruba community or an Igbo community. Although the story did not actually take place in that location, but because you want to make the reader believe that it's actually taking place in that location, you are using certain features that are associated with that particular location and bringing them into the story as though it exists. You understand what I'm saying? So the setting is that environment. It also refers to the conditions. It could be the social conditions, it could be economic condition, it could be political condition within which you are setting that story. For example, you can be in a society where corruption prevails. You set it in such an atmosphere where corruption prevails and you go on. The themes. Now, you don't say this is the theme of my work, but the story itself brings out your message. Right? Because the theme refers to what? The message, the main point you're trying to make through that story. What your plot is trying to say is the message of what you're writing. It's usually embedded in the words used in your narration or in your descriptive or in whatever you're embarking on. Even if it's a poem, it hides that message within the words used. And what are those words called? We will get to know what the choice of words in a narrative work or in any of this prosaic, dramatic, or poetic work entails. Is that okay? Now, characters are the participants in the work. The persons you bring into the work. For example, in a drama in a class where we have a student who came to school and decides to follow bad gang and at the end of the day dies, we are going to have the student who came to school is a character. Then we're going to have the names of the gangs, the gang members, if there are names for them, or if it's just a gang you want to call it, you call it a gang. Then we're going to have maybe a principal of that school or a headmaster. We're going to have teachers. We're going to have students. These persons are going to be the characters that will make up that particular work. You understand what I'm saying? The characters are the participants in the work. They are the persons involved in the revolution that brings about your writer. Then we have characterization. Characterization is the manner which you try to portray those characters to your reader. The manner you expose the imaginary characters to the reader. The manner which you paint them. You might paint that student who came to school as a notorious person, I mean to say. You can paint him as someone who doesn't listen to cancer. You can paint him in any way. In reality, note that this character is in the first place fictitious because it does not exist in real life. You are just creating it. And so, the way you paint him to your reader, when your reader reads reads the novel or reads the book or reads the poem or reads the drama, the way you portray the personality of that person in that work is what we refer to as what? Characterization. So it is the message you give the reader about what you're writing, about that person, that we call characterization. Is that okay? Then we move on to diction, which is the choice of words. The words you use in your prose work or dramatic or poetic work is what we refer to as choice of words, how you choose your words. Sometimes you could make use of figurative usages. We will get to talk about that. You can make use of figures of speech. You can choose short sentences. You can choose complex sentences. But it's all a question of your choice of words. The choice of words is simply called what? Diction. And then we move on to figures of speech, which are symbolic words. Now, in alphabet, you have words in their figures. For example, what figure does this depict? It depicts 2. Now, 2 here refers to the word, while 2 here refers to what? The figure. Now, the figure usually carries a message behind. This figure here carries a message. What's the message? This is the message, right? So, figures of speech are those symbols that carry secondary meanings. There are symbols that carry what? Secondary meanings. That's, you try to bring what you want to say. I want to say 2. But instead of writing the 2 in words, I put it in figures. That is what we do in literally writing. You want to say a particular expression, but instead of saying it outrightly, you put it in a particular shape so that it appears in this bodily structure, either as a metaphor, or as a simile, or as personification, or as oxymoron, or as epigram, or irony, or hyperbole. In our next class, I will be hinging more on figures of speech, even though you are not in a literary class, in a literature class. But the truth is, you actually need these figures of speech to be able to effectively do creative writing. Is that okay? Now, unlike your composition and essays, you don't really draft out title and then you begin to do introduction, body, and conclusion. These ones go beyond that. When we're talking about creative writing, it goes beyond just that. Like, for example, poems, we have them in different patterns. You can just write a 2-line poem and it's a poem. You can make it 3 lines, you can make it 4 lines, as the case may be. I hope you enjoyed yourself today and I hope you learned something today. See you in our next class. Thank you very much.